This podcast was sponsored by Panic Brand. Panic Brand is a modern apparel store for the modern mean machines of 2020. By using the link in the description below, you'll get a discount, and a portion of that goes towards High Tech Low Life, your favorite YouTuber. And there's plenty of outfits to choose from. There's plenty of shirts to choose from, and I'm sure you'll find one that you'll like. Welcome to High Tech Low Life, where today I have for you a returning cavalcade of podcast casts. Unfortunately, Budgerific won't be joining us this week, but I believe she will be joining us next week for the special Halloween episode, or whenever we do it, really. And why don't you say hi to everyone? We have Elroy and Kay, and we have a new co-host today, Immortal You. Why don't you say hi to everyone, guys?
Hello. Maybe too loud.
Yeah, it's all right. All right. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've met these people in college, and I've been doing my own things since I left college for a while. But at least I've actually been working pretty hard on what I do. So I just work in manufacturing, and yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And to the viewers at home, I think you remember the other two co-hosts too, Elroy and Kay. Why don't you two say hi?
Hello.
Greetings to the listening audience.
Yes, indeed. And so let's get down to business, shall we? Let's talk about our first topic of the day: product placement in movies, in video games, in other media. What's your opinion on this?
Product placement.
Go ahead.
Product placement is one of those things, no matter how much some people are critical of it, it's just a facet of our society. And the whole purpose of it is to draw brand awareness. Sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes in very over-the-top ways. For example, one of the most popular examples, if you've seen E.T., that was a whole campaign for Reese's. For Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I believe it was Pepsi was all over that movie, if I'm not mistaken. But those are just, like I said, a couple of examples. And the whole point is, like I said, for you to become well-versed with that particular brand, and they want to do it in a way where there's a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Immortal You? What are your thoughts on product placement?
I've actually seen, like, I think Activision with their Call of Duty, they say they're putting their own like games into them. So that literally, I understand that. But sometimes like product placement in terms of like Pepsi, Coca-Cola putting themselves into a movie, it's just like a lot of money just to promote something.
What about you, Kay?
There's a few cases where I've seen it's been rather entertaining. I think there was a couple pizza examples I can think of, but in general, it's very rare that I see it done well or done in a way that isn't very glaringly obvious what they're doing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's one, it's clearly advertising, and two, it's something that very rarely enhances a story, if not outright just takes away from it. Like, I think there are some examples where it might enhance it. Like, I remember Stranger Things season 2, they're eating KFC, and it's like the 70s, right? And
it might be 80s. I'm not sure.
Actually, it might be 80s. You're right. It's very on the nose, and that one guy says it's finger looking good, like just straight up. But I think that kind of enhances it too. You know what I'm saying?
You know what's the best examples for product placements? South Park. It has like every
Yeah.
every product placement you can find.
Yeah, but South
And
Park is making fun of them typically.
and don't forget, Back to the Future 2, those famous Nikes actually did get mass release. So that was a big campaign for Nike in terms of when Marty McFly went to the future.
You know what would have been sick? You know what would have been sick though is if they had a product placement for flying cars in that movie instead.
Too bad we're
And
never
they-
gonna get one of those.
Yeah,
It's coming.
2015.
Just give it time. But
Man,
let's be honest. Product placement is also how a lot of movies are made. Because, I mean, the Bond film franchise is the king of this in terms of all of those gadgets that have made billions over the years.
It's basically the Batman of movies.
In terms of product placement, it really is.
Yeah, let's see. You got you got a lot of Sony stuff in there. I remember Casino Royale had a lot of Sony Vios. I'm not sure which. I'm not sure what like hotly international spy would use such a recognizable brand, but like.
And don't forget BMW.
No, James Bond typically drives an Aston Martin.
BMW was
there were BMWs in some point in the Bond series, but either way, you still get the point in terms of product placement. So that's two major car brands.
I thought the BMWs were mostly from the Tom Cruise movies.
I'm sure they had those too.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of time with product placement, brands don't have to be loyal to one particular group of films. A lot of times you may see them in different movies or different forms of media.
Yeah, and I think in the original Bond book, James Bond, I believe, drove a Bentley instead of a Aston Martin in the books. And so I think they would have. I think had Bentley capitalized on the whole product placement thing, I think they could have gotten it, and it would have been like book accurate. I don't think anybody really cares about that for a James Bond movie, but still. So, any more thoughts on product placement?
Isn't Cyberpunk supposed to have product placement sometime in the near future?
Well, what do you mean?
I mean, like from what I've seen, like I've heard like Cyberpunk is supposed to have like, I don't know, like Coca-Cola. I think I've heard like they had like some kind of deal with like with some big popular products. But I'm not really too sure.
I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Don't forget, GM was all over Transformers.
Oh, I remember that.
So was Budweiser too. Especially in the fourth movie, the one with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't remember that scene? He's in China, and like they got shot out of a building or something like that, and then some like Chinese guy gets like all up in his face for getting in his way, and he gets up all in his face, grabs a beer from one of the crashed Budweiser trucks, starts chugging the crap out of it. Oh my god, that's the most egregious scene. And you really have to check it out for yourself here.
And if there are any Idiocracy fans out there, that was one of the earliest promotions for Starbucks I had ever seen.
Idiocracy?
Idiocracy?
Yeah, that's a good...
If you remember, there's a scene where you see something that looks very, very reminiscent of a Starbucks logo.
Yeah, but that's satire. That doesn't really count as product placement. At least not in the same way we see it as.
No, actually, it was product placement in Idiocracy. They did that intentionally in regards to Starbucks, so that was intentional.
Like Starbucks actually paid them to be mocked?
Well, yes, and the fact that they even referenced it, so there you go. And Carl's Jr. may also have been referenced in the movie, but you still get the point, though. Like I said, that was an early example before it became the juggernaut that we know it as.
Those are good examples of product placement, especially the Carl's Jr. ones. Especially the Carl's Jr. one.
And for those who are not necessarily from the West Coast, Carl's Jr. and Hardee's are synonymous. It just depends on the matter of location.
Yeah, crazy to think about. anyways, y'all. Anyways, any final thoughts on this topic before we move on?
I think we're good for now.
All right. Now let's talk about the second topic of the day: region locking in media. And region locking has been prevalent since the dawn of media. Really, it's been certain pieces of media are made to cater to certain demographics in certain regions, and there's cultural differences in regards to who enjoys what, et cetera, et cetera. That said, they've also gone out of the way to create technologies that make it so that I can't watch like a DVD I buy from like Vietnam or China or Japan or whatever and play it in like a European or American DVD player. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Can I just say, Crunchyroll has the most broken region locking in media ever. They have so many animes in there, but they just region lock it like in EU and stuff. I'm like, why do you even do that?
But
I don't.
when you look at this region locking phenomenon, as Star alluded to, it impacts how we take in certain media. Because a lot of times when it even comes to if you're going to share music on social media, you gotta be careful because within a matter of about 20 seconds, you may get hit with the message that's only available in certain regions. And it could be an extremely popular song, but due to a variety of reasons, you won't be able to get it if you live in certain regions, unfortunately.
Unless you pirate it, which I strongly do not recommend doing that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody recommends pirating, especially not to the casual person. But if you're someone that's experienced, you don't have to listen to us, anyways. Any thoughts on region locking, K?
Oh, not particularly. I think you've pretty much covered the topic as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, and so I think one of the big strides towards unblocking region locked content, especially for like in streaming services, is if you're going the legit way, is to get a VPN. And this video is not sponsored. This video podcast isn't sponsored by any VPN person. Otherwise, I'd be telling you about it. But VPNs are often ways to get around censorship. I know Netflix has some anti-VPN technology. Not really familiar with what they do because I don't really use Netflix. I don't really use any streaming services because I know exactly where to get my stuff if I really want it.
Please sponsor us.
We'll see if they sponsor us.
Yeah, that'll eventually one of these days.
But for video game companies, depending on how much fans want to put out, that is a way to get them to invest in their particular consoles, especially for those who like JRPGs. They might be inclined to have a Vita or something of the like.
PS5.
All right, here's the thing with region locking video games. Different regions in the world have different pricing models for games depending on like the economy's buying power. So back before Steam basically locked up and made region locked codes, essentially you could buy games from any region and link them to any account, and they'd be like a quote unquote global version. Like games in Russia and like Brazil and those second world countries, so to speak. Those countries, they're a lot cheaper than games that you would buy in like the US or Canada or Australia. In fact, Canada and Australia have more expensive video games than the US does.
Say that Australia literally has the biggest delay in all of gaming.
What do you mean by that?
Every time someone plays a multiplayer, like tries to connect to a multiplayer server, their server is like so far away that like people end up like lagging so hard and so hard.
Well,
that,
you
like,
shouldn't even. Well, you shouldn't even be playing with Australians. That's the thing. Australian people can play with people in like the oceanic countries, such as like Singapore or Malaysia,
SCA,
and they can also the Southeast Asia, and they can also play with people from like New Zealand. They have their own little region. They can call it Oceania. and that's totally fine with them. But I mean, like, if you're playing a well-coded multiplayer game with like region servers, then why are we even talking about region servers?
Okay,
This
let's
wasn't even a
go.
topic.
It's still region logging, but whatever.
So, region locking. That's why a lot of people back in the day used to get like mod chips. Nowadays, games are region free. You can import a game from Japan and play it typically on your PS4 or Xbox. Most consoles aren't region locked anymore.
How about that? I've seen some games still region locked.
What game released this generation is region locked?
Let me check.
And I'm willing to bet those are like really niche Japanese games that wouldn't get a release in America anyways.
I think there was one game called. Okay, that was so long ago. Okay, but no. Thinking some visual novels are still region locked. That's what I not think of.
Visual novels?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You mean, by region locking, you mean they're not sold in America, right?
They're not sold in America.
Well, I mean that's not what I meant by region locking. Means that like you take your Japanese game and you're unable to play it on your American console, which just isn't true nowadays. Nowadays, you can add like a Japanese PlayStation account to your PS4 and buy Japanese games. You have to buy Japanese PlayStation money, but the fact of the matter is it's very possible.
Okay, let me just say, I think the region locking is mostly in mobile games now. Because there's a Konosuba game that's just region locked in Japan and is not coming out to America.
Wow, whatever, man. I don't want to talk about gacha games right now. This isn't the time. So, any final thoughts on region locking? No final thoughts? All right. Let's move on to the next topic. Skill-based matchmaking. Is it really as bad as people say it is? Is it really that controversial?
Depends on whether it's implemented well or not.
Well, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Depends on whether or not it's implemented well, or if they're kind of using an improper system for their game. Like, one thing I've always heard about is how the ELO system it's primarily used for chess in a one-on-one setting and doesn't always translate well to team-based games.
That does make sense.
You see I'm sorry. You seen the Call of Duty how Call of Duty's matchmaking has been. It looks really, really bad over there.
You're gonna have to elaborate. I haven't played Call of Duty since like high school.
Yeah, but like so basically they implemented a matchmaking. I think they implemented some kind of matchmaking into the multiplayer servers, and all of a sudden like but the matchmaking is so terrible that like people have been complaining for like 2-3 years now.
How is it terrible?
Because like you're basically dogfighting against better players.
So what you're saying is the system doesn't work.
No, the system does not work.
Okay. All right.
Here's my thing about matchmaking. I think I'm not completely opposed to the idea, but the way I would envision it is it should be something that as players prepare to do matches, it should be an option that they choose. Do they want to take the challenge of playing higher ranked players hoping to move up, or do they want to get some practice in with those that may be similarly skilled? But it shouldn't be something where it's forced on you, but you should have the option to choose if you want to engage in or not.
Well, the idea behind skill-based matchmaking is it's supposed to protect you from higher ranked players in case you're like a new player. Like a lot of new players, I bet you if they were matched up with literal pros in the league or someone like me who's extremely good at video games, I would dare say, or someone like you who's good at video games. And let's say you continually trounce them and they can't seem to get in a good match with other rookies. they would probably quit the game, right?
Literally
There's a
uninstall.
likelihood.
Yes.
There's a good likelihood that could happen.
That's why fighting games are so unpopular, because fighting games, you're matched up with people that have been playing since like Street Fighter 2 in like 20 years, and they've been playing for like 20, almost 30 years. And they have like genre awareness that, you know, doesn't come with just having skill. It comes with time as well.
I'm gonna tell you something. The worst thing about skill-based matchmaking are Smurfs. Smurfs are I think the Smurfs are destroying matchmaking
I'm
because
gonna bring that up as well.
Smurfs are not a problem with the skill-based matchmaking itself. It's a problem with the players. Companies have policies where you can't have more than one account at a time. Obviously, no one follows these policies, but the fact of the matter is, they can enforce it if they find out you're actually a Smurf.
but they won't. I highly doubt they'll ban them.
I mean, yeah, because there's a chance that they could just ban someone that gets the game really quickly. But what I'm saying is that there's a way to fix that. Skill-based matchmaking.
But
Sorry.
the thing about that is, though, I know smurfing is frowned upon. We all agree to that. But the thing is, sometimes people may have a reason for creating said Smurf account, so it's still something that'll be hard to regulate, because if for some reason, even if it was just because of a misunderstanding, if my account gets banned, I create a new account. Of course, I want to be a low level, no matter what my skill is in a particular game.
Well, here's the thing, though. Skill-based matchmaking isn't based on like a rank. Like, you know how like a lot of games have like level systems where, oh, you're level 60, that means you've been playing forever, and sometimes it's irregardless of skill, right? Like Call of Duty has a system like that. But also Halo, back in the old days, Halo had a skill-based system where you would only level up if you're winning, and you know, you would continually progress and play against people of very similar levels. The max level being like, I think, level 50 in a skill-based playlist. There should be two playlists. One playlist should be casuals, where there should be some level of skill-based matchmaking, but it's very loose, so to speak. And there should be a competitive playlist where you play against people of very similar skill, you know?
Literally any MOBA game. Literally any MOBA game.
MOBAs are fucked. Let me be frank. MOBAs are totally like whack, because I don't know how to describe it, but I mean,
I play a lot of MOBAs.
A lot of the MOBAs don't have functioning ranked like the way you expect. You know what I'm saying?
Like I think League might be one of them.
I think League works, but only because they've had it. The League's like 12 years old at this point.
League and Dota, those two. Well, Dota's a little bit weird. Has had its moments of being a little bit weird.
But most newer games don't have the maturity of either of those games, and as a result, the skill-based matchmaking doesn't work. Like Overwatch, Overwatch's matchmaking system is broken.
I've heard about that.
I've played Overwatch, and I've watched my cousin play too. He plays a lot more than I do, and he's a diamond rank. But sometimes he'll get matched with like silvers, and like sometimes he'll get matched with like grandmasters, and it's actually insane. Just the range that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, that their system is completely wackadoo. So for whatever reason,
So my personal stance is that skill-based matchmaking needs to exist in order to foster a player base. Otherwise, it's going to be run over by the sweaties and the people who don't call themselves sweaties but are, like, you know, streamers. I've seen most of these complaints come from streamers who don't want to they want to look like they're good, so they just like whine about how the game doesn't let them be good. They don't want to put in the effort into putting their wins. Like Elroy and Kay, don't you believe that you should put in the work to win,
Yeah, of course.
especially if you're playing against someone else who is hopefully putting in the same amount of work.
I suppose so.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's meant to prevent easy like wins. And winning feels rewarding. Winning should feel rewarding, right?
I mean, that's at the backbone of video games. That was the whole point. I mean, we're not in that era now because the dominant game in terms of popularity aren't the ones that are score based per se, but that was the whole point, to grind to the point where you could be one of the best of the best.
Yeah. And like, I certainly don't feel satisfying when I play someone that's never played a fighting game before. I don't feel satisfied when I beat them. You guys know this. You've seen me
that.
play.
I have felt that before. I was like, this is not satisfying. Why am I even playing with movies?
It's funny you mentioned this. Star may remember me telling this story, but one of the first anime conventions I went to, they had a console room where you could play consoles of different periods. At this time, PS2 was still popular, so this was around the PS2 generation. Just to
I
get
think
some
you've told me
hindsight,
this.
just to give hindsight of just how far anime conventions have come. But anyhow, I was playing Soul Calibur on Dreamcast, and I was playing this one kid. I was clearly better than him like 5 times in a row. It had to get to the point where he keeps trying, but I just have to bow out. Nothing personal, but I just don't want to keep doing it because I already know how the outcome was going to go.
I was just giving him the pity win by then.
No, he hasn't earned the win, but I would bow out.
And that's what I did because it's just like he was trying, but it was not going to go in his favor. It was clear.
Was he ever close?
Not really.
Oh.
Yeah, that is rough.
But you never know though, because I've seen the kid never play Initial D, and he was like a prodigy. He gave the person that won the tournament a run for his money, and this was just some kid that never even played the game. He just it was instinctual for whatever reason once he started playing. And Initial D has a learning curve for those who have played or haven't played, so you just never know sometimes.
I'm used to arcade racing games, but I've never played Initial D before. No,
I would recommend it, but anyhow.
Let's. I think it's time to move on. Let's move on to the next topic: remakes, remasters, demakes, demasters. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it'd probably be good to clarify what you mean by demakes and demasters, because those are less common terms.
That was just part of the title I made in the list. We're just mostly talking about remakes and remasters. Let's
talk about the Mulan movie, because that movie I heard was terrible.
I've watched it. It's when you watch it, it doesn't seem all that bad. It's not as good as the original, obviously, but the more you think about it, the worse the movie just becomes. That's just how it is. That's just how it was for me.
For me, a remake nightmare was... I'm a personal fan of Paul Verhoeven's classic 1980 movies, RoboCop, the original. I'm guessing everybody may have seen it on the podcast. Maybe not. But anyhow,
I've seen it.
The original is a classic. Then they remake it, and it's just like, what are you doing? Because they go for a whole totally different dynamic. Yeah. Because with the original, it was more of a social commentary in terms of when you look at what was going on in Detroit at that time, in terms of what they portrayed in the movie, and even when you look at contemporary Detroit. But it lost that element in regards to how, for the sequel, it seemed like they wanted to focus on the special effects and see what kind of money grab they could do with it.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. RoboCop was violent, and a lot of the violence was there to, shock you. Although they made a lot of kids merchandise on RoboCop, they ended up RoboCop. Oh, did something happen to me?
I think so.
Briefly disconnected and reconnected.
Oh shoot! Well, anyways, I'm still back on. Anyways,
yeah,
so what I was saying was that they made the PG-13 RoboCops in order to cater more towards kids, and now this is also a PG-13 RoboCop, and also more for the same. And I agree, it doesn't have the same. What's the word? Je ne sais quoi. It doesn't have the same feeling because it's obviously not meant to be the same movie. That said, it does feel worse. There are some really no, don't get me wrong. There are some really good scenes in the RoboCop remake, like the one where he is first RoboCop, but he's attached to like a pole or something. He's hooked in, and essentially they tear away like all of his robo part limbs to see what's left of him. I thought that was a really good scene in a otherwise mediocre movie. And then he talks about how he wants to die instead. I don't know.
But do you guys hear there's a I think there's a remaster for I don't know. Is there a remaster for Pikmin 3?
No, I've never actually played any of the Pikmin games.
But
What were you guys?
I haven't played any Pikmin either.
I played like Pikmin 2. That was
I'll be honest. The most experience I have with Olimar is from Smash Brothers. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, same.
I
hate him. I cannot stand. I've tried playing him. I can't stand it.
Can you believe that Grand Theft Auto 5 is still being like remastered? I think it's still remastered to next gen consoles.
I can believe it. Rockstar, bunch of greedy buttholes.
I just found it interesting though with what Immortal you just raised, because it seemed like their most popular game was going to end up being San Andreas. The way it's still universally loved, but 5 definitely is the one, like you said, that was most commercially viable.
It's funny you mentioned that because GTA 5 also takes place in the same like area as San Andreas.
But it's just totally different gaming experience, though. I mean,
oh yeah. I just thought it was ironic. You could think of it as like a semi remake, sort of. Not really, but you know.
But that game's
it's coming.
But
I guarantee it, because of the money that San Andreas and the popularity behind it. There's going to be some type of remaster in the future. I think.
I might be
especially when you.
Okay, there might be a remake for San Andreas. I could probably see that. But a remaster, they probably need to ante up their graphics a little bit higher.
It's Rockstar. They have the capability of doing so.
They're literally the rock stars of the gaming industry. Literally, they live up to their name.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, and plus they do what Rockstar does extremely well is there's a lot of attention to detail, especially in like Red Dead Redemption 2. I think they've done a lot of things that, quite frankly, no one would ever really notice. Like your horse's like testicles shrink when it's like in the snow. Like I forget why they mentioned that, but it's just a thing that they added, and it's really weird. But I thought it was really cool tech that they made. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think most of these games are going to be re-releases or remasters because new gen consoles are coming out. So some of these games from a PS4 is going to be that are coming to the PS5 or the Xbox series.
Well, here's my thing with remakes and remasters of this coming generation, this next gen. The thing here is that the games are fully backwards compatible, and now they're coming. And now there are, I guess, patches or upgrades, the various upgrades. So yeah, sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. So what were you guys saying again?
We were continuing the discussion about remakes.
Remakes, remasters from previous gen to next gen.
But I can say, in terms of we looking at well, we haven't quite gotten to the remastered part of the discussion. So if you don't mind, Star, can I take it there?
Yeah, go ahead and take it.
That was a welcome thing for me in terms of when Crash, Bandicoot, and Spyro got remasters for PS4, because there was such great gaming experience for me in my childhood. Because I mean, both of them are two beloved platformers. But it's good for those who didn't necessarily play. This is an experience they can teach their kids to say, well, here Crash and Spyro, I grew up with them. They may not be as familiar to you, but here's a chance for you to experience them as well.
Don't forget, you also have Super Mario 64 to Galaxy. That was also 2.
Yes.
Those are not remakes or remasters.
I think those are ported, I believe.
Those are just ports. Yes, they're just ports. There's no graphical upscaling or enhancements, and they're not totally new games built from the ground up either. They're just emulated versions of those old games that are made easily playable on your Nintendo Switch controllers.
You know what's? I was just looking. There's this PS4 game called Who's played Panzer Dragoon? Like way back when.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's an old Saturn game.
Yeah, they remade it.
I mean, I'm not surprised. Sega loves rehashing the same ideas too. Let's be frank.
Well, I'll wait. Switch getting a new Knights game then. But anyhow,
come on, you know that's never happening.
Hey, they should. But anyhow, that's water under the bridge. So
yeah, I'm an avid Saturn owner, and I know these things are quite foolhardy.
I'm gonna keep looking, but there's also the Prince of Persia. The Sand of Time is getting a remake.
Yeah, every game is getting remade or remastered. Come on,
a lot of these games have become.
But let me pose a question to my fellow hosts. As we talk about this topic, what are some games that you would love to see with current graphics get a nice remake or remaster?
Well, I for one would love to see Vanillaware games be ported to PC, and they can upgrade the graphics if they want, but I just want them on PC. Like Odin Sphere Letharshir is one, as well as a Muramasa Rebirth. Have you played those games?
I haven't.
Muramasa was originally on the Wii, and the game is gorgeous. It's like a mix of like anime and like traditional Japanese watercoloring. It's beautiful, and it's almost the same with Odin Sphere Letharshir. Well, Odin Sphere Letharshir is actually a remake of a PS2 game called Odin Sphere. Well, funny enough. I would just love. I just want to see those ported, as well as the new Vanillaware game that's gotten rave reviews. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, I believe it's called. It's on PS4.
I'm hoping Shadow Colossus is actually going to be on PC.
Sony would never allow that to happen. You might as well ask them to see if they'll port God of War.
Actually, they started to put some Sony games. Like they put Horizon Zero, I think, into as a PC, and Death Stranding into PC.
Kojima always wanted Death Stranding, and Kojima is basically a rock star. They basically have to cave into his demands.
I guess so.
Kojima basically just gets whatever he wants, unless he's with Konami. Then Konami just kicks him out of the company.
Yeah. All right.
So,
anything else?
For me, in terms of games that I would love to see be given new life in terms of on these next gen systems, I wouldn't mind another Mystic Ninja game. Even though I haven't played it, I've watched playthroughs and have close friends that have played it, and they have nothing but positive things to say about it. And you know the one that I've talked about that's nearest and dearest to my heart in particular, probably more so because of music than anything. Come on, Chrono Trigger. Come on, Squaresoft. Where's the Chrono Trigger at? Come on, show Chrono Trigger some love. Yeah, we know you did Final Fantasy VII, but the new gen, this current generation of gamers need to experience what it means for Chrono Trigger. That whole time traveling done right in popular media for once. Come on.
Are you talking about Mystical Ninja Goemon?
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's Konami owns that franchise.
Oh, no wonder. There we go. But there's hope for Chrono Trigger though, because Squaresoft could do that. So let's hope that does happen.
I could see Chrono Trigger getting could get a remake. I can see that happening.
I can see it happening, but Modern Square is very questionable when it comes to their quote unquote remakes or remasters. Have you seen the Final Fantasy VII remaster? No, Final Fantasy VII remake?
They
Yeah,
changed the story. I heard they changed the story, and I guess we had to wait like 10 to 20 years for it to get part 2 and part 3.
Like-
and yes, we have heard about it because our friend that we always reference
Yes, our
could
mutual
not stop
friend.
talking about it when it first was released. He could not stop talking about it. So most of us have heard about it.
So, are Final Fantasy VII spoilers off the table yet?
I said we can shelve that because maybe we do something when our
I
friend appears
think-
on an episode because he'll love to talk about it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So
So
we
we'll
need to get
save that
on
for
that.
him. We'll give him his own segment.
He was just posting. He was just constantly posting about it. I was like, please make it stop.
Yeah, me too. Me too, man. Me too. Especially when he Aerith posts. Like, man.
He was simping over her. That was the thing. I was like, please stop.
He's always simping over her.
I was, waiting for him to react happily or not to see how far the game went. But well, he really was quite obsessed with that game.
I mean, I understand.
Same
Aerith
here.
is his first video game girl crush. And
His
when
first
like
wife, I think it was.
yeah, some would say his first waifu. But you've all seen the scene. You've seen how she dies. We all
let
have.
me just
Oh, yes.
confirm. We all heard during our collegiate experience him talk about this waifu shrine. And being that I actually did visit him a couple years ago, I've witnessed it. It is what he said it was. Just to
Oh,
give
God.
confirmation.
God.
Oh my god.
Yes, the waifu shrine is real.
Dude.
I think I just go hide in the corner.
It's I've seen worse. Probably there's a lot worse, especially in Japan.
Oh, Japan is the worst place to actually to find like.
Well, I mean,
all
that's
these
kind of
shrines.
where it almost like totally originated. But let's
Yeah, I guess.
let's
Okay,
let's move on. Let's move on to the next topic. We're getting totally off topic. now.
Yeah.
So the next topic is cameos, fan creations, and what really constitutes as IP infringement. So our good friend over here, Elroy, follows the WWE, and I believe he talked about this at some point in time in regards to
Yes. So
yes, do mention.
some of our listeners may remember a couple or so episodes ago, it was mentioned how Vince McMahon had proposed a major policy change in terms of if and what would be plausible for wrestlers in WWE to use their wrestling personas in terms of outside engagement. Well, he came up with a definitive policy, and the rule is now in terms of if they have a cameo, some of that money has to go to WWE. It's not something that's negotiable. So it comes to the question of, should you want to work under those conditions, or should you try to find some way where you can capitalize off your likeness without money going to a person that didn't even have anything to do with develop the particular persona you took on?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the wrestlers' personas are treated as separate characters. You know what I'm saying? Like the Undertaker is one such a character. And he's arguably the most broken character in all of wrestling. He can literally die and come back to life. How is that not totally broken in wrestling?
It's all part of theatrics, but in regards to the topic, this whole idea of IP infringement is nothing new, because I can remember something I learned playing Persona 5. There was an attempt where somebody wrote a book and they tried to insert Sherlock Holmes, and they gave him some conky name like Herlock Holmes or something. But the original author, of course, got witness of that and basically shut that down so that did not happen again. So if you're going to, in terms of want to create a character that may be based off of the inspiration, there need to be key differences, because just a subtle difference is like playing around with the name is not going to be the answer, because they will come for you. Or even when it comes to music, the melody cannot be eerily similar. It can have some of the same tone, but if it's too similar, they will come for you. I mean, that's just a reality.
I mean, that's true. That's true. You have that's true. You have a lot of similarities in songs. You remember Ice Baby and Under Pressure? Basically, well,
Yes, that's a very good
yeah,
example.
that is a very good example. It's a good
And then
song,
you
by the
want
way.
to,
The Queen one. I mean, not the
and you
Vanilla
want to talk
Ice one.
about IP infringement. Were you guys familiar with the major lawsuit about the song "Game Over" from Namco?
No, I'm not familiar with
No,
that.
no.
But the artist Little Flip, he used the Pac-Man. I believe it was the Womp sound for Pac-Man without their permission, and they came for him. And that's why you never heard, even though it was a very popular song, after a while you did not hear it anymore because Namco was furious that this person didn't have any kind of agreement with them to use that. And that's just a minute aspect of Pac-Man, but the sound that Pac-Man made. And that was all throughout the song.
Well, it's iconic, man. And it really calls into question like product placement and all that stuff. Wow, it goes back to product placement. Like, can you not put these products in your movie, or like can you not mention, like, let's say there's a song and it mentions sipping on Pepsi. Like, is that considered IP infringement? Or like some other songs where it's like, I'm going Donkey Kong or some shit like that, like
That's a matter of depending on what kind of contracts are made. Because you got to remember with product placement, that's a matter of contracts. The
and like a lot
company
of
and
like
agreements are made, but that's something that you will have to research because if let's say it's Paramount Pictures, if they do have some type of agreement with Coca-Cola, there's no way they're going to allow you to have that Pepsi song on the soundtrack. That's just not going to happen.
well, it's not a Pepsi song. It's just
It's
I
just a
mean,
random
a
song
line.
that actually
Example.
adds the thing that adds the whatever thing it is in the song for some reason.
And there's a lot of rap songs that mention going Super Saiyan, because I mean that's something they enjoyed, or like about to finish you off, etc., etc. Because like rap people that write a lot of rap music are like low key nerds,
That is
and
true in a
like
number of instances, and that is definitely something we could explore, like in a future topic, in terms of nerdom and popular culture, because it's definitely much more embraced now. It's not taboo like it was like in the 80s.
thank God too, man. I couldn't imagine living in the 80s.
But yeah,
Like a
so
lot.
that's something that we should talk about too. Nerdom and popular culture.
Yes, and I think another thing we need to mention about this topic is fan creations. Fan movies, fan games, and how sometimes companies are okay with it, but sometimes companies will go after. I think Nintendo is the only one that comes to mind that's been especially like litigious when it comes to these fan games. Like
I got something about fan creations. So I've actually gone to on Reddit way back a little while back of Five Nights at Freddy's. I went to the Five Nights at Freddy's Reddit. The creator of Five Nights at Freddy's is porting all the fan creations into console.
okay, all right, that's one thing. I know another person that's doing something very similar, but in the literary sense, is the guy that wrote the Metro 2033, and essentially he created an initiative in order for people to write their own stories based in the Metro 2033 universe.
But
And a lot
as
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry, excuse me.
No, go ahead, man.
And using another example in terms of how you can take these ideas and do it right. Will Smith recently announced that there's going to be a reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And this also ties into our previous topic of remakes, excuse me.
No way. There's no way.
Yes,
He
because
confirmed
hold
it.
on.
He confirmed it.
Because what happened was there was a leaked video about a couple years ago. A person created his proposal on how he would re-envision a more darker, more edgier Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And Will Smith loved the idea. And 2 years later, he announced that they will be revisiting that and working on producing the actual show.
You know what's
What
weird?
did-
That show was supposed to be comedy.
Oh,
Was supposed to be mostly comedy.
it's a sitcom.
Yeah, it's a sick. Well, yeah, it is.
But in terms of the reboot, if it goes the way that the original pitch was made, there will be a darker tone to it because it's not. I mean, it still have those family-friendly elements, but there still will be a difference in terms of the Fresh Prince character.
Would they be bringing back the original cast for the most part? Because James Avery Jones is dead.
See, the thing is, they will be using fresh characters, but there will be a Fresh Prince reunion soon. But as far as the show, they would need newer characters in terms of that whole youthfulness, because all of these Fresh Prince characters from then are probably at minimum 40 or if not older. So they'll be bringing in fresh faces.
You think you think Will Smith will be part of it too?
He's saying he's going to be part of
producer.
Yeah,
he's the executive producer.
Yeah, he's still going to be
part
of
like
it.
Actually be in the show besides being a producer. You think he's going to be like the narrator? That'd be pretty cool.
No, I think he's going to be. He's going to be.
You gotta do something with him where he makes like a big cameo that you don't expect, because you don't want people to watch it because of Will Smith. You want his influence to be there, but you don't want him necessarily to be watching because he's making an appearance. Because certain shows try things like that and it doesn't always go well.
You think Jada Smith is going to be in it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Don't know.
I have a
but we don't want to, like I said, get too far off topic. But it was just relevant in terms of their ways to do things without, like I say, I'm getting to the point where you're infringing on somebody's intellectual property.
Yeah. So I think what the biggest cases of companies going after fan creations was definitely Nintendo going after a couple of high profile fan games. One such a game was AM2R, or another Metroid Remake 2. No, another Metroid 2 remake.
And don't forget the infamous go-kart race in Japan that got shut down.
That too.
Weird? You know what's weird? I'm going to tell you a story. So there was this Minecraft mod called Pixelmon in Minecraft, right? You know how big Pixelmon. So Nintendo was fine with it for a while, and then they were like, "Okay, yeah, you can't make like you could still use the mod, but you can't add new Pokemon to it."
Nintendo, admittedly, is well and within their rights to do that.
But they were fine with it before, though. That's the thing. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's Minecraft. It's a big game." Like,
Nintendo is very wishy-washy. They're basically Japanese Disney, for better or worse.
I think that's true.
And they also went after whatchamacallit, a fan game, Pokemon Uranium.
I remember that.
Despite the fact that both of those games, AM2R has all original like assets and all original music, art, even some of the map layouts are original too, despite mostly being a remake of Metroid 2. And Pokemon Uranium has all new assets and everything's original basically. And Nintendo took it down because of the idea of it being a Pokemon game that could, in theory, rival it. Also, speaking of Japanese Disney, let's talk about American Disney, aka Disney. Disney is very infamous, and they are the sole. I would argue they're the sole reason as to why copyright law in America has been extended to about 125 years.
We'll call it the Mickey Mouse Law for nothing.
Of course.
I'm not making that up. It's commonly known as the Mickey Mouse Law, the most recent extension.
So go ahead.
And this is something that Kay and I have talked about. You're talking about what goes wrong when intellectual property is in the wrong hands. You got to understand, there's no limit. I personally like to call him the rat because he's so gangster. I mean, we all know Mickey Mouse is no smiling thing. We know he's gangster in terms of how he do things. He's all about control. When they made that major acquisition to purchase Fox, I was surprised when Kate told me to just how many movies that Fox was going to work on had to be canceled. We're talking in the hundreds.
Man,
and that's the thing about intellectual property. depending on how big your company is, it's not always a matter of that you don't have a good concept. It's just a matter of what the overall company wants. So that's the thing. And I'll mention about Nickelodeon as we talk about that in a second. But I know Star had something he wanted to share, so I'll come back to my thought.
So, speaking of the Mickey Mouse law, January 1st, 2024 is when, in theory, Steamboat Willie will enter the public domain. But assuming that Disney's not going to try again to extend copyright law. And so my question is the ramifications of this, because Steamboat Willie obviously has Mickey Mouse. Does that mean Mickey Mouse himself enters public domain despite there being hundreds, if not thousands, or even like tens of thousands of things featuring Mickey Mouse?
No, the thing you got to understand, the law refers to that particular entity, but long as Disney has the rights to the Mickey Mouse character, and they have done it on one or two occasions, if they make an agreement, somebody may license him for temporary use, but they don't have ownership to it. So no, it just all depends on, you got to take each and treat each entity individually.
Mm. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So, actually, from what I'm reading, if it comes to pass and Disney doesn't also extend it, it seems as though Disney's claim to the film star will also go with it as well, meaning that anybody can make a Mickey Mouse thing.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's not normally how it goes. Normally, it's the opposite because the film will be treated as a separate entity. But that's quite interesting, those ramifications.
Like Sherlock Holmes entered a public domain, and now anybody can write a Sherlock Holmes thing without any repercussion.
My understanding, Disney's made it a little more complicated, and there's a few other ways they have to fight for Mickey Mouse, so to speak, other than strictly copyright. I think there's some trademarking as to the imagery that they're anticipating using to fight for it in the future.
That does make sense. And I think Mickey Mouse's design is a little different than, what he is now. So it might just be restricted to just having to draw Mickey Mouse in black and white.
But one thing all of us can agree on, whether we like Mickey Mouse or not, Disney knows the importance and influence of intellectual property, because that was a major move when they acquired Marvel Studios. I mean, that was major in terms of everything that came with that acquisition. Because if you would have told me 10 years ago that Wolverine was going to have Mickey Mouse ears, I would say you were out of your mind. But now look at where we are.
Yeah, that's why they also bought Star Wars. But
I won't even go into that. Somebody cue the Imperial Death March theme. Yeah, that's how I felt about that acquisition.
I've actually never been to Disney World before.
I have.
I would. Come on. What about UK? Have you been to Disney World?
I went for the first time a couple of years ago.
Come on. That means I'm the only one that hasn't been before?
Sounds like
Wow,
it.
must have not had a childhood then. That dang. But I would still love to go as a grown adult. Might be a little awkward unless I have a kid and be like, "We're taking my son to Disney World, whether you like it or not."
I'll pass.
That'd be
done it for me.
That'd be a good excuse to take myself to Disney World.
Honestly, I went to okay. I went to Universal Studios also, and they had actually a Crash Bandicoot over there.
I will say I enjoy Universal better than Disney personally.
Yeah, I think Universal has always been the owner of Crash Bandicoot. Even back in the days when Naughty Dog developed the games, Universal always owned the character.
But before we veer too far off course, I was saying I was going to mention about Nickelodeon. When I went to, and no, we're not necessarily trying to do plugs for, so I'll just say I'll just say it was a Comic Con, but wasn't that long ago, about 4 years ago. I went to a big Comic Con in my hometown, and I had the chance to meet Bob Kemp. For those who don't know who Bob Kemp is, he's the person that was the creator of Ren and Stimpy on old school Nickelodeon. And I had a very good, lengthy conversation with Mr. Kemp. And one of the things he was telling me, and this is relevant to what we're talking about, is when Nickelodeon first started, it was all about content creation. It wasn't about trying to, sell the most merchandise or get so much commercial appeal, but it's about a group of creators that created what they liked and they really wanted to do that and they had a passion for it compared to where we are now.
Oh yeah,
And it goes
merchandise.
back to what I was saying. When it comes to intellectual property, unless you're part of a small scale operation, if you're part of a big scale operation, to a certain extent, what you value as intellectual property isn't the end all goal. It's all about profit.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, man. But I mean, like, merchandising has always been a thing, even since like the early '70s. That's part of like Star Wars is basically a
But
merchandising
I'm glad
vehicle.
you mentioned that. But let's be honest. When we look at the golden era for Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, there was some merchandising, but was it really like what we see with SpongeBob now? Let's be realistic. Come on. It was not bombardment like what we see now with SpongeBob, or even how Teenage Mutant Ninja well, that's a bad example, so scratch that. But let's use SpongeBob as an example.
SpongeBob, yeah, I'll admit SpongeBob didn't have that much merchandising back then, but it did have a decent amount of merchandising once it
But
became
no, but
popular.
look at where it's become later. Like they still.
Yeah, so the Discord bot
Okay.
that we use keeps.
We apologize
You,
for the technical
you
difficulties. We'll
probably need
continue to
to
work through
unmute
this.
it. Is that if there's a way?
That's not the issue. Trust me.
Okay.
Are we back?
Yeah,
Yes,
we're
we
back.
are back. So
Okay. So
yeah,
yeah,
go
looking
ahead.
at SpongeBob, why it's clear that there's some type of marketing juggernaut in terms of SpongeBob, because the show quality hasn't got any better, and they keep producing episodes, keep making movies, keep making games. So that's why I say it's interesting in terms of, if we look at intellectual property, there was a shift from the stuff we grew up on in the 90s and early 2000s, where it was all about quality. Because a perfect example, Teen Titans was an exceptional show. Cartoon Network wasn't trying to do all this merchandising blitz. Look at where we are now. Teen Titan Go, there's a merchandising blitz. They're trying to get kids to bug their parents to buy whatever merchandise comes with the show. So that's the thing. Now with intellectual property, a lot of times it's about how much can I capitalize off it versus creating something that people are just going to enjoy for the sake of enjoying it.
Let me tell you this: Teen Titans Go is literally the most what's it called? The most showed thing on Cartoon Network, and it's actually driving other people crazy right now.
Wait. You said that it's the most popular show on Cartoon Network?
No, it's the
The
most
most shown show. They
shown.
purposely show it every day. Purposely.
Oh,
And it's gone to the point where like people like started to like not even care about Cartoon Network anymore. They're like, if it's going to keep going with Teen Titans, then I might as well not watch it.
Cartoon Network hasn't been good in years.
I think the
And
last
that's
time
something, and that's another topic we can talk about too, in terms of we can tie that in somehow, some type of nostalgia like topic for another episode, because there's definitely a shift in terms of what we grew up with versus how basically kids are being sold merchandising now, unfortunately. So we can talk about that.
Let's move on to the next topic then, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about the next topic. So I think the next topic, we can talk more about this merchandising push later in a different episode. But for now, let's talk about the newest tech news. AMD and Nvidia. September, October has been a bombshell for anybody even remotely interested in PC gaming. For starters, in case you're unaware, Nvidia announced and released the RTX 3000 series, which has really blown away previous gaming performance, and any claims that consoles might have had also blown away too.
We're talking about the pre-order for the 380.
We have talked about that in previous episodes, but yes, let's just say that the pre-order situation is still foobar. No one can get their hands on a 380, and I certainly haven't.
Nobody can. I've had people tweet about it. It's like, oh, I can't even get this game. I can't even get the 380 right now.
I mean, you can get it if you're willing to pay buttholes on eBay, $1,000 for.
I want to buy from the official producer, not from some freaking person that bought it. And then you have to.
Well, the issue is that it's going to be this way for probably the rest of the year.
And that's not even tying into the mailing delays as a result of COVID.
Yes, mailing delays too. Yes, this is quite crazy, honestly. I can't even imagine.
Because I can speak from experience. There was an item that I had purchased, and because of mailing delays, the seller basically just refunded me my money because I don't know what's going on. So because of nonsense, you might not even get the product. So I'll just give you your money back.
What item is it?
It was this wasn't necessarily tech related, but there was a special jacket made to commemorate one of my favorite hip hop albums, Forever Famicom, and there was a commemorative jacket that was made, but unfortunately I won't receive it because of mailing snafu, so I was refunded my money. So it's just something to be aware of too.
That's bogus, man. Come on, man. That totally sucks.
It does.
But that's a reality, so that's why even though there's so much tech that people do want or have envisioned getting, it's no guarantee, even though some people want to be the first person to say they got it. Just know, as far as when it arrived, it's just a matter of what the logistics are going to be. That's just what we're dealing with right now, unfortunately.
Speaking of pre-orders, my brother pre-ordered the Oculus Quest 2, and he got it, and he shared it to me, so I can confirm that he has one.
Well, that's good. See, he was fortunate, but I know for a lot of people, let's just be honest, because we all heard about how Amazon broke new records for Prime Day. I mean, they were topping what happened the day after Thanksgiving in terms of sale. And let's just be honest, if they're making profit like that, it is no guarantee everything is going to be arriving on time, because that's just too much to be going out too fast.
Yeah,
I feel bad for the workers for over there.
Not to mention 2020 as a whole. So let's not get carried away here. 2020 is also a major thing. I'm sure had there been no coronavirus or COVID-19, that Nvidia might have managed to make enough GTX 3080s to sell to everyone. Well, not to everyone, but to a lot of people.
A lot of things could have been sold quicker with 2020.
Now,
this didn't happen.
I'm kind of just making conjecture because a lot of the reason why this crap gets sold out is because people use scalping bots to buy way more than they should. Tens and hundreds of these units.
And I'm glad Star mentioned about 2020 because, callers, given the roller coaster that it has been, we will definitely have a recap episode in the future where we'll just talk about the roller coaster ride that was known as 2020.
Kay,
at the end of the year. That'll probably be at the end of the year.
Kay, you haven't said a lot. Is there anything you want to say?
Not particularly. It's mostly just you've been kind of covering the topics pretty well.
That's true.
That's
true. So,
later topics that I'll have a few things to say.
Okay. And so, what are your guys' thoughts on AMD's new 5000 series processors? The 3.
I'm sorry, I have not heard anything from AMD, so I'm not intrigued into this topic.
Well, AMD, the processors are out. You can buy them, or I think at least the influencers have them, and the benchmarks are said to be better than Intel. Which, I mean, they've been destroying Intel in productivity, but now they've truly encroached onto Intel's territories. in regards to, well, gaming. Seems to be some sort of technical issue with Elroy. You can't hear. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, they're supposed to be better than Intel in gaming now. And as a result, the prices have gone up too. AMD, for the first time in a very long time, has seen it fit to increase their prices above Intel's offerings. Huh. Any better, Elroy? Can you hear us now?
Yes, I'm back.
So AMD. So basically, the gist of it is that AMD has significant improvements in per clock performance as well as increased clock speeds in their new Zen 3 processors, which can be slotted onto your pre-existing Zen 2 and Zen 1 or Zen Plus motherboards, if I'm not mistaken, that is. And not to mention, they've basically encroached on Intel's claim to fame being the best quote-unquote gaming processor now. And as a result, they've seen it fit to increase their pricing above Intel's pricing across the board. So what are your thoughts on this?
This doesn't become kind of a race to the top in prices.
We're looking at the Clash of the Titans when it comes to graphics.
Well, when it comes to graphics, AMD is the only other competitor for NVIDIA, and AMD hasn't given us any information on Big Navi, not yet. They say that the performance is comparable to an RTX 3080. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how good it is if the pricing is totally out of whack. Like, most people will only buy AMD if it's either significantly better than whatever NVIDIA is offering, or, well, if the pricing is, well, a lot more fair, so to speak. So, when do you think you guys will be upgrading your PCs, if at all?
I have a laptop, so I don't matter.
Do you not have a desktop?
No, not at the moment. I'm thinking of building one, but
That's
just
a
wait.
project I'm going to eventually endeavor to do because I'm going to go the PC route in lieu of getting the next gen console.
Yeah, who do you think convinced you to do that now, Elroy?
We'll talk off after podcast about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. As for you, Immortal You, I definitely think you should embark on that same journey. Build your PC, but only when you can assuredly get those parts at their MSRP at the very minimum.
Don't have a lot of space in my place right now, so
I mean,
my place is basically crowded to the point where I'm like, okay, if I'm
No,
gonna
no,
build a PC,
you can build like an Xbox sized PC. You can build like those mini ITX PCs. They're really small.
where am I supposed to put it?
Anywhere basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can show you some examples off camera.
Well, I like the laptop for right now. So laptops are my thing, my personal kinds of thing. So if I could build my own laptop, I'll be fine with it. But if I want to build a desktop, that's gonna take a freaking. I'm not that great at building stuff.
I see. And what about you? What about UK? Do you have any intentions of upgrading your desktop or making one if you don't have one?
But I might in the next couple of years, I think.
Well, me, I am addicted to having the best of the best, and I don't even have the best of the best, but I have a pretty dang good PC now. I'd love to just upgrade my computer now.
Watch. Star Logical is going to freaking get a 380 one of these days.
One of these
we
days,
know that's going to happen. We already know that's happening.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be quite frank. I do think I need more RAM now because I think I'm starting to hit the limitations of 16 gigs of RAM when it comes to video editing, especially when it comes to video editing these podcasts together. Because as soon as I start rendering it, it jumps all the way to 100% RAM usage, which is not a good sign.
Wait, is it RAM usage or a network issue?
RAM usage.
Okay.
I have to render a lot of special effects for the podcasts, and I guess just videos in general. I think RAM is a necessary upgrade for me. I think the
Did
rest
you
of my
say you have?
enough.
Sorry, how much RAM did you say you have?
16 gigs.
Yeah, you need to upgrade that.
Yeah, I'm thinking I upgrade to 32 gigs.
See, I think I have a laptop that's like, I think it's like 120 something. I don't remember what it was. It was a freaking
What?
monster.
120 something gigs of RAM, or are you talking about like storage space? There's a difference.
No, the storage space was 1 terabyte. Let's say that, but the RAM was actually pretty big too. So I don't remember what it was.
Well, I see. So yeah, hopefully I can get a 32 gigabyte kit and just use both for 48
Okay.
gigs of RAM. That'd be pretty sweet. So let's move on to the next topic at hand, graphene. So before I talk about anything, who here is familiar with the super material?
More or less, yes.
Not me. I've never heard of it in my life.
Elroy, are you familiar with graphene?
I read up on it a little bit, but not as well versed as you or Kane.
So, for those of you who are uninitiated, such as Immortal, as well as the rest of the audience, hopefully, graphene is essentially a super material that consists of a microscopically thin sheet of carbon atoms, basically. And it's said to be the strongest and lightest material in existence right now. The only issue is that it's never left the lab because of manufacturing constraints. But there's a multitude of uses that this super material can be used for. And I think K is more of a reputable source of this than I am. So why don't you take it away, Kay?
Well, more or less, the difficulty is that it can't be produced at much more than a microscopic level. In effect, it's just a bunch of carbon atoms linked together either in a line or in a two-dimensional array. So the result of that would be you'd get something that's incredibly lightweight and incredibly strong, but as I said, the issue is we can't really produce it, last I checked, much more than, as I said, microscopic levels.
Mm-hmm. So what about some potential uses for this super material? And yeah, go ahead.
I would say you name it, anything that realistically could be used, could require a stronger or more lightweight material. I think one of the examples I always remember hearing about was things for like space elevators or various aeronautical equipment, lab equipment. It has a lot of interesting applications, just as anything that is a stronger metal would be.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting sort of. Well, hold on. What's going on here? Yeah.
Someone's
So
doing something.
yeah. So yeah. Basically, yeah. That's it. It's a super material, and there's a lot of potential for what could be used for. That said, none of this really matters if it can't leave the lab. And anyways, any final thoughts on this?
I don't have anything. I really don't know.
Okay. And so I would look into it if yourself. It's some pretty good stuff, though. I'm no scientist. I don't work in the lab, and I've never actually seen the material myself, so there's not much I can really say about it. And I would presume the same for K.
No, I've never seen any in person or anything like that. No.
It'd be super cool though to like have. Speaking of which, let's move on to the next topic at hand: fake news. Mainly the propagation of fake news within social media. So, how many of you guys have a Facebook or
I'm on
Twitter?
social media, so I'll say that I'm an avid social media user.
How many of you have Instagram? Yeah, you all have social medias. Good, because this illustrates the point, quite frankly. How many of you guys on Facebook see people ranting about things or spreading some sort of trying to talk about some sort of misinformation only for people to get argumentative on your timeline too?
They're called political advertisements.
I stopped caring about what people were saying. I'm sorry, but like once someone says something, like you either think like two things come on. They're telling you about something, or and this is why I stay away from any news and social media, because like it literally just wants to grab your attention.
How many of you guys would say that you guys have friends you know that really annoy you in social media, who really piss you off? I have my fair share of people on social media.
I do. I've seen people I really get mad at.
Yeah, me too, man.
Yeah, I think all of us have had that experience.
And so the issue with social media is that there's no real way to moderate it. And a lot of people, it seems to me, I don't want to say they're uneducated, but I mean they're just kind of uneducated.
unless
The knowledge-
unless you're
Oh,
a
no, I shouldn't say they're uneducated. I should say more so that they're unwilling to fact check themselves. They're unwilling to put in the work to really really check to see if it's true or not, you know?
Look, of
Mhm.
course, you put your iPhone in the microwave. It's going to charge it.
Okay. Beep, beep. Oh no, my iPhone exploded. How could you do this to me, Kay?
That's a favorite little fake story that made its rounds long ago.
Yes, I remember 4chan had a brilliant idea, and they decided to do that. People are just so willing to believe whatever, as long as it looks presentable. People are willing to believe.
All of us have seen the Spider-Man movie, and Kay loves to reference this particular character, but you got to realize that the whole idea of a J. Jonah Jameson came from somewhere, and it ties into what we're talking about perfectly.
Spider-Man, sensationalist. You know what drives newspapers? Sales, not news.
Spider-Man is a menace.
Spider-Man is a menace. I can't do it.
That's your reference right there.
Yes, but like, yeah, Spider-Man is a menace, but he's also one of the greatest heroes of all time, which is why the news covers him, and also it makes a lot of money, especially since Peter Parking does both the Spider-Man and the Spider-Man's photographer's part, which is kind of bullcrap if you really think about it.
Yeah, but you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta remember, this New York City. It's not cheap to live there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh man, honestly, I just want to point out to my viewers that I don't know what kind of people you are, but I would hope that you put in the effort to really discover the truth for yourself. I'm not saying don't trust any adults or don't trust anyone that you know to be smart, but I'm saying try to discover the truth for yourself. That's the biggest problem we have in society.
Remember what the X-Files told us, ladies and gentlemen. The truth is out there.
That's good. That's a good reference. I haven't seen the X-Files in years. Now, as for our final topic, let's talk about the Apple events. As you know, Apple recently had an event about a few days ago, and they announced some really, really cool looking products. And they announced, well, they announced the new stuff. They announced the iPhone 12, 12 Pro with 5G, MagSafe, and the HomePod Mini. So, are you guys familiar? With the old MagSafe technology that Apple used to use?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, my dog's barking. No, not really.
No.
So, Kay, you said yes, right? Anyway, so essentially MagSafe used to be for MacBooks. Essentially, before they switched to using Type-C for charging their laptops, MacBooks used to be known for having pseudo-magnetic cables that would easily detach upon like being tripped over or like yanked or whatever. Like, you've seen them, right? Essentially, magnetic cables break away. Like, how many times have you guys tripped on like electronic wires?
Far too many times.
Depends.
That alleviates it, because normally when you trip on it, you fall and your electronic gets messed up. It's the worst of both worlds. Whereas in a world with old MagSafe style charging, essentially if you trip over it, it just safely disconnects from your laptop. You might still trip. Let me be quite frank. You might still trip, but the fact of the matter is your laptop is safe. And that's probably the best thing Apple has ever done.
Okay,
Sorry,
go ahead.
So they're bringing back MagSafe, but as a sort of like system of magnets for iPhone 12 as an accessory. Essentially, there's some magnetic coils in the back that allows you to attach things via magnets on your phone. Like, in college they give you those crappy little like things where you put your like credit cards or like or cards or whatever in on the back of your phone. Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like you stick it on the back of your phone. Okay, so now they made a version of that where it attaches via magnets instead on the back of your phone. I think that's really cool.
I don't think adding magnets to something. Well, the funny thing about the whole sticker on the back of the phone is you don't want to put magnets around credit cards.
That is true.
Topic altogether.
No, that could go very badly.
I'm sure Apple can figure out a way around that. Otherwise, you just have something that'll potentially wipe out your credit card, make it unusable.
I think the most interesting thing about this launch is not necessarily what the iPhone 12 has, but what the iPhone 12 doesn't come with. We've got another instance of that. You heard it doesn't come with?
I heard it doesn't come with a block. It comes with a lightning. What?
It does not come with the ability to charge it.
So it's just a phone, basically, is what you're saying.
You have no way to charge it unless you buy additional accessories.
That's honestly the most unthinkable thing that Apple has actually done. Not including a charger. Come on, that's like, what if you're buying it? What if this is little Timmy's first iPhone? He's just not gonna be able to charge it until like his charger comes home within the next week or so. And I think the fact that they say that Apple did this for environmental sake, but like, how much space does that really save?
I mean, listen, you have you have chargers at home, so I'm guessing like there's a
I don't.
reason.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have a ton of iPhone chargers laying around my house, despite the fact that I don't own an iPhone. But the fact of the matter is that Apple should have included one. Official Lightning cables are expensive as crap. They're like $20 a pop. And I'm not saying that you can't just go and buy some third party Chinese cable for like a fraction of that price. But come on, that shouldn't even be a real consideration, especially if we're using the phone outside of the right outside of the box. See, this I like a lot of things Apple does, despite the fact that I'm not a huge Apple fan myself. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that Apple does this crap, and the fact that every other manufacturer in the world seems to copy the really bad stuff that Apple does, is a bunch of bullcrap.
Can we talk about the Apple versus Epic Games issue a little bit? Because that's also another thing that's been on my mind.
And from the last time we talked about it, nothing's really changed. Though a lot of companies have started to join forces with Epic, and mostly like Spotify, Amazon, Microsoft, and they're big people that are joining against this. And I think the biggest ramification is what would happen to Apple if, let's say, they lose. Let's say that they make it 15% instead of 30%. That's half their profits. And I believe Apple makes a couple billions from the App Store, mostly because people are buying less and less hardware from them.
Who's at fault though? The question is, because I think Epic Games is at fault mostly because they wrote a contract for it.
Yeah, it's Epic. Epic totally calculated this whole thing. Okay, like I'm sure Apple, but I guess they didn't plan on Apple going totally nuclear. But the fact of the matter is that Epic Games knew this was going to happen. They knew that they were going to get blocked, and so they prepared this 64-page document to Google and Apple, should they have been removed. I mean, Epic is kind of scummy for doing this because, because let's be frank, the only reason why they're doing this is for money, and they want to open their own Epic Game Store on iOS, and I presume Android as well. But the fact of the matter is that they're not totally wrong. Apple does have a monopoly, and as does Google. It's a duopoly, really. And I'm going to be quite frank with you. I do hope Epic wins, so that Apple, not so that Epic can get their own store, but so that developers can get more of their fair share of being paid. You know? Like, do you think 30% is excessive for someone like Apple or Google, for that matter, guys?
It's a pretty sizable chunk of the pie, so to speak.
I agree. That's actually a pretty big chunk. Not gonna lie.
And what about you, Elroy?
Repeat the question, please.
Do you think 30% is an excessive amount for Apple to be claiming on these digital purchases?
I'm with Immortal. That is a sizable chunk when you're talking about basically almost a third of it. So that is something to think about in terms of if you were negotiating with them.
So the 30%, if I'm not mistaken, originated from retail, physical brick and mortar stores, right? Like, there's a lot that has to be done in the 30%. It was more worth it, I guess. You have to pay for shipping, you have to pay for shelving, you have to pay for the product itself, etc., etc. And and also they had to get paid too. But you know what I mean? Apple doesn't like when you're when you're buying V-Bucks. You're not Apple's not shipping them from California to your local Apple store in, let's say, Virginia or DC. No, it's all digital. There's no shelving, there's no inventory, there's no possibility of running out of stock when it comes to these virtual goods. And yet Apple still is making a killing off this, as is Google. Like, don't get me wrong. Google's also in on this, as are all console as are all console publishers too. 30% is a standard, but and everyone makes that 30%. But the fact that some of the bigger players make some of the bigger people like let's say Netflix. They have more exclusive negotiated rates, right? And you know that. And it's also got to the point where you can't even register for like a Netflix account on your Apple device because they're trying to bypass Apple's 30%. And you also can't do it on Spotify too. So ultimately, I think Apple's policies are a little draconian. That said, what kind of phone are you guys rocking?
Android over here.
I'm on an iPhone.
What model of phones?
Galaxy. What? It's not a Note. I got the S12.
You mean the S20?
S20. Thank you. Sorry.
And I have an S8. I do want to upgrade my phone soon. I'm looking into getting the S20 Fan Edition, but that's still expensive. I just want phone prices to just drop down again to reasonable prices.
As we shifted towards a more mobile society, that's not happening.
Of course not. If anything, phones are just going to get more expensive, which is funny because they've begun to outstrip gaming PCs too in terms of pricing.
More stuff you could do in mobile, but yeah.
Like you can literally buy an S20 or Note 20 Ultra. What was that? You okay? You okay, Immortal?
My dog dropped my headphones. My bad.
Okay.
All is well.
But
there was something else that was interesting in Apple's presentation, because it makes me wonder. Eventually, when do we get the steel cage match between Alexa and Siri? Because there was something that looked very eerily reminiscent of the Amazon Echo that was in that presentation. I'm sure I'm not the only one that noticed that.
You have a good eye. I see you're talking about the HomePod.
Yes.
See, the only reason why I didn't mention that was because Siri's a piece of crap. Basically, for whatever reason, Siri used to be the cutting edge technology back when it first came out, and now it's basically the worst of the virtual assistants. It's even worse than Cortana.
We talked about Cortana.
And Cortana literally died in a Halo game and came back as the villain of a Halo game too. So there's that.
Some of these people have not played the game. I'm sorry, but some of these people have not played the game.
All right, well, Halo 4 and 5 are almost 5 and 10 years old, respectively. So that's their loss.
Okay.
Speaking of which, yeah, Siri is basically the worst virtual assistant. It's beaten by basically any other virtual assistant. It's beaten by Amazon Alexa. It's beaten by Cortana. It's beaten by Google Assistant, which is the best one, by the way. And personally, if you're gonna get a home assistant, I would stick with either Echo or Google because they have established things. They have established skills and programs and whatnot that you can get for them.
And it's funny, and this could be a potential future show topic as well. But I'm probably gonna be known as the pop culture reference guy now, especially after tonight, because you know what movie predicted that we would have all of these kinds of assistants in the home? There's a Disney made for TV movie called Smart House, and that was the whole premise of the movie in terms of the technology was doing everything. It was only but so much you had to do. So just
I
something to think
remember
about
this.
in terms of predictive programming. That's what you call it, predictive programming, where media will often predict what might end up becoming a trend that is a universal part of our lives, whether it's the iPhone or a number of other instances as well. But yes, so maybe we need to do that too for future reference. Check out the movie Smart House and talk about it.
Well, there was a Ray Bradbury short story that predicted this sort of thing as well.
Fahrenheit 450. No, it wasn't Fahrenheit 451. Which one was
No, it was
No.
something else.
No, I forget the name of it, but essentially the family has already died in the nuclear apocalypse. But what's left behind is their smart house still preparing like everything for them. Granted, it's a lot smarter than the houses we have because it like dresses the family as well as like cooks bacon and eggs and bacon and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically it. It's a fully functioning smart house to its
But
like.
as you talk about the smart house that Bradbury alluded to, that was suggestions essentially. Rosie, the maid, did everything, literally everything.
Oh, the Jetsons. That's a show I haven't seen in years.
But I mean, that is when you talk about the idea of a smart house. That was like probably the first example you had right there.
Yeah, that's kind of the romance behind it. It's a future home. I guess the issue is that no one really imagined that it would be at the cost of your privacy, so to speak. And I hate to say it, but it's essentially a wiretap. Wiretap. Give me a recipe for my anything. Okay, based on your search history, it seems that you need a recipe for how to make sushi. Here are the instructions. Yeah, like it's basically a wiretap, man. These companies are more than willing to give your information away to the highest bidder or the government if need be. And your phones are also your wiretaps too.
Anything's wiretapped.
And let me be quite frank. You know that how like people are afraid of vaccines because they're afraid that the government is gonna microchip them and shit like that. Like you've heard the conspiracy theories, right?
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
But it's something people actually believe in. Like people believe in a lot of crazy stuff, but the fact of the matter is that the government doesn't even need microchips. You already have the perfect wiretap, your smartphone. It already knows everything you know. It already knows it knows more about you than you know about yourself. And the corporations behind that data are more than willing to sell your information. So, I mean, there's no real need for a microchip. You already have one. Am I just
No, because we have tracking beacons called mobile devices. Those are effective tracking beacons, whether you have location on or not.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's what some people think, well, I'm safe because I turn my location off. No, it's still a tracking beacon.
Anyways, any final thoughts on anything? We went like way off the rails there. No final thoughts?
Well, this is my first time doing something like this, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll have you around next time, especially with Budgerific too.
Yeah.
It's a good time.